Hello and welcome to Fearless. This is a podcast about strength, resilience, and rising anyway. My name is Kilene Shelley. Thank you so much for being here. This week is actually a really big week for our family because Cadence turned 16. So, in honor of her birthday, I decided maybe it was time to tell her full story. Um, I know we've talked to Katie, we've gotten a few little bits and pieces here or there, but I've never really told the whole story about the day of everything and how it progressed and how we figured out that it was an AVM. So I thought, why not talk about it right now? And I wanted to look at this very similar to what I would look at if I was having a guest on the show and talking to them about their child and their child's journey. So I want to start with who was Katie before her AVM? And quite honestly, it goes all the way back to when she was born. Katie was actually born on March 25th, 2010. Very quickly, she kind of came into this world like she lived her life and lives her life, very loud and quick. And she's a lover of her family. She is a lover of her friends. She feels deeply about things that she's convicted about. She is a light. She definitely lights up every room that she goes into. So prior Katie and Katie now, the only difference is Katie now is just even more bright and wonderful. So probably one of my favorite stories about Katie was when I was pregnant with her. I actually had a dream. I told Rob, I'm like, it was so weird. There's like this little skinny thing just running around and her legs were going so fast. And I just couldn't believe how tiny she was. And then Katie was born and began walking at 9 months old. And she was this tiny little thing with just her legs running around the house. So she's always been super determined. This has not stopped that. So knowing who Katie was prior to her AVM and now, none of that has really changed. I think she's just gotten more determined through all of this. Had you asked me on August 13th, the day after everything happened, if we would be celebrating her birthday, I would have probably told you no. It was definitely a very scary moment for our family, but now looking back at how far she's come, I think it's definitely a week of celebration and time to share her story through her mom's eyes. So we kind of heard a little bit from her. August 12th was her day. It was the second day of school. She had gotten up just like any normal day. Her and her brother left for school. They did a full day of school. The only thing that was kind of different was that her dad picked her up right after school and they went directly to the golf course because it was tryout week for the golf team. So about four was kind of stuck in my brain. I got a text message from Rob, my husband, and her dad. And he said, hey, if you have 10 minutes, can you bring by the cooling towels? I left them in the refrigerator in the garage. And it was an August day in Florida, so definitely hot. And they could have definitely used the cool towels. So in my mind, what's so vivid about that text message that he sent me was I immediately went into, do I need to put my shoes on or do I just go barefoot? Do I just have him meet me at the car or do I park the car and walk it out to them? I thought about bringing the dog because the dog loved car rides and it would be just a quick little 10-minute car ride for the dog. But ultimately, I put on tennis shoes. I'm actually in the same outfit I was in that day too. So all of this is taking me back to that moment. But I put on a pair of tennis shoes, left the dog at home, and decided to park the car and actually go onto the driving range. When I got there, I noticed how busy it was. There were so many kids out there, different groups having lessons, different groups practicing, and our girls were at the very far end of the driving range. So I started walking down there, kind of stopped where Katie and the girls were hitting, and she came over and told me she was hitting really good and that she was about ready to head over and putt and chip. But she had a few more things that she wanted to, a few more clubs that she wanted to hit while she was on the driving range. So I just kept walking and met up with Rob, gave him the cooling towels, and he kind of went back to helping a girl with her swing. And I just kind of stood there and I was talking to the two coaches. So the boys' coach was there and the girls' coach was there. And we were just having kind of small talk about the kids, the season, some different fundraising stuff, just normal everyday conversations. And in the corner of my eye, I saw Katie go to her bag and pick up her water bottle and kind of sit down and start drinking water. Didn't really think anything of it. It wasn't abnormal. So I looked back to the conversation, and shortly after I looked back, I heard her screaming. And it was a scream unlike really anything that I had heard before. And I immediately turned around and was like, what is going on? And I noticed, even as far back as I was from her, that her face was drooping and almost looked like her jaw was out of joint, like it had been knocked out of its, if that's even the right terminology for a jaw. And I said, did you get hit? With as many kids that were out there, I honestly initially thought she got into someone's backswing, or maybe someone lost control of a club and it hit her, or their ball went sideways and hit her. Like, there were so many things going through my head at that moment. But I started walking towards her, and at the same time, Rob started walking towards her because she just kept screaming, like, it hurts, I'm gonna die. But by the time we got over to her, she had already kind of lowered herself to the ground, and she just went quiet at that point. I can't tell you what everybody was doing, but there was a lot of commotion around her. So people were running into the clubhouse to grab the pro. They were bringing over cool towels, water. We were kind of just trying to cool her down, thinking that maybe it was heat related. When a lady kind of showed up next to me and she said, are you mom? And I said, I am. And she's like, well, I'm a nurse. Has your daughter ever had a seizure before? I said, no. No, we've never had to deal with anything like that. She's like, well, I think your daughter's having a seizure. I'm going to call 911 and we're going to get some help over here. So she called 911, and Katie was pretty much non responsive at that point. She was just kind of laying there, very tensed up though. And at that moment, I didn't really know what to do except to go wait for the ambulance, because I'm like, I'm not really doing much good just standing over her. So I walked down to the parking lot and met the ambulance there. About 10 minutes after that phone call was made, they came out and immediately went over to her and tried to get her to wake up. They were not able to get her to wake up. So they put her on the stretcher and took her into the truck and worked on her very briefly. And then came out and told us that they were going to need to get her to the nearest hospital, and that I was welcome to go with them. So I jumped into the ambulance with them. Rob followed in his car behind us, and it took about 15 minutes, but we made it to the ER. They got her out of the truck at that point and took her in and immediately took her to a CT scan. The doctor on duty that day for the pediatric side was this elderly doctor, I would say probably middle to late 70s, went in, and I could see kind of everybody stop as she was having the CT scan done. And then everything started to pick up again. And the doctor came out and said, I'm really sorry. Your daughter has a massive brain bleed. There's not much that we're going to be able to do here at our hospital. I'm going to work at finding air transport to either Tampa General or to All Children's. Whoever has room for her is where we'll get her sent off as quickly as we possibly can. They immediately took her into a room and started working on her. And within minutes of them getting her back to the room, they came out and said, we're going to need to intubate and keep her kind of stable for the transport. The doctor let me know that there would not be room in the helicopter for us. At that point, he had very quickly figured out that Tampa General was probably going to be where we were going, and he was just kind of waiting to hear if the helicopter was going to be able to come or if they were going to need to transport her by ambulance. Luckily, the helicopter was available. So within, I think it was a total of 58 minutes from the time the incident happened to the time that she was being airlifted. So very quickly, they moved super fast to get her where she needed to go. Rob and I jumped into the car, and we were actually pulling up to the hospital as the helicopter was landing, which is a very weird and bizarre situation to be put in, to see your child pulled out of the back of a helicopter while you're down on the ground. But we parked, we made our way to the ER, and the most amazing friends were already there for us, waiting for us when we got there, and just basically carried me into the ER. The ER immediately noticed that there were a lot of people. They got us a private room very quiet room to the side, and we just kind of waited for Katie to be brought down into the ER and evaluated by the staff in the ER. It was probably 20 minutes at the most when the doctors came into the room and explained to us that she definitely had a massive brain bleed. They were working directly with the neurosurgeon team, which was the other doctor that was with us, and that at this moment they wanted to insert a drain into her head that would help remove kind of the blood and the fluid that was pooling so that they could better evaluate what needed to happen. Rob and I were able to go back there before they did that to see her. At that point, she was still non responsive and vomiting quite a bit, just a little bit restless. You could tell that just things were not right, but things were still moving very quickly behind us. We weren't able to be there for the drain to be inserted because it is a surgical procedure. So they had to get the room sterilized and be able to do that. So they asked us to go wait with everybody again. And once that was done, they would be transporting her up to PICU and kind of evaluating what needed to happen next. So the drain insert took maybe a half hour. And they came back and they told us that she was stable. They were moving her up to PICU, and all the departments were going to monitor her very closely. But one of a few things was going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. One, they were going to be able to stabilize her enough to bring her into surgery and locate the AVM and remove it, or the brain was going to continue to swell and they were going to have to go in and do a cranioscopy to remove that portion of the skull to allow the brain to expand. So not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Rob made it pretty clear that he was not going to be leaving the hospital. So I kind of made a quick plan with everybody that Cooper needed to get home and get to bed, but that I would be coming home as soon as they got Katie kind of stabilized in her room. And I felt like comfortable enough to where I would be able to leave. So a couple hours later, probably about, I don't know, 11:30, she was finally up in her room, hooked up to everything. The nurses and doctors were kind of humming around her, and I felt like she was in a good spot where I could go home and get some rest and come back the next morning and really figure out what the best plan of action was going to be. So I left Rob there to stay with her, and I went home and hung out with Cooper for a little bit and went to bed. Woke up probably about 4 in the morning and rolled over immediately and checked my phone, and there had been a message from Rob at 3:05 stating that they were having to take her back into surgery. So I quickly got up, took a shower. Nothing in me felt that there was something bad happening or that I needed to drop everything and just run. Like I felt like I had a little bit of time. So I took a shower, got Cooper up, made him take me over to get my car. And then I got over to the hospital. And at that point, it had been a couple hours. I got there about 5:30, 6 o'clock. So she had been in surgery for a while, and we really hadn't heard anything from anybody. We were just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. A little bit after 7, the chief neurosurgeon came in. And at the time, we didn't really realize that he doesn't go too many places alone, but he was alone. And he walked to the back of the room. Rob and I were kind of sitting in a corner, and he looked at us and he said, 30 minutes ago, I wasn't sure I was going to be bringing her back. And I'm not convinced that she's going to make it through the day. So you need to prepare for that reality. And I can remember those words just kind of hitting me and bouncing through my head. And again, nothing in my gut told me that that was the route we were taking. Like it didn't feel like the end for her. I didn't feel like her time here was done. So that conversation seemed very foreign to me. But he left, and Rob and I were kind of in the room alone again. And I could tell that Rob was not in a great place. How could you be? And he looked over at me and he said, I just need to know that you're going to love me at the end of this. And I lost it. I just started sobbing, more of like, I don't believe that this is happening. Like, this cannot happen like this. And then as quickly as it came on, it left. And I said, no, this isn't the end. This is not how her life is supposed to end. She has so much more to do. And if we have to take it hour by hour or minute by minute, that's what we're going to do. At that same time, around that same time, a nurse came in and she had said to me, I'm leaving. My shift is over. I'll be back tonight and Caddie will still be here tonight. And that was just really the glimmer of hope that I needed at that moment to kind of keep going, kind of just meet Caddie where she's at. Caddie ended up coming back from surgery, did not look great. We had called some friends and asked if they could bring Cooper up to the hospital because, again, we weren't really sure what was going to happen at this point. And that meeting with Cooper did not go great. As much as you plan for how something should go, it is jarring to walk in and see someone you love in the state that Caddie was in, multiple tubes coming out of multiple areas, multiple IVs, hooked up to more medications than I could have counted at that time, and still this unknown of what we were dealing with. They had told us that it was an AVM. I had no idea what an AVM was at that point, but I knew that we were going to have to take this in steps. So everybody kind of came up and said what they needed to say at that moment. But I was still convinced that we had a journey in front of us. I didn't feel like this was the end. And sure enough, later that afternoon, early evening, Caddie was able to respond to one of the neuro checks and actually wiggle her toes and give a thumbs up, which was a great sign. It meant that she was still there and she was still moving. That was really kind of just the start of the miraculous things that happened with her over the next 48 hours and weeks. The girl just continually showed us that she was in control, whether it was her whipping out sign language, and she was still ventilated and not able to talk, to communicate with us and let us know what she was feeling, to all the way learning how to walk again and use her arms again, and her 64 days in the hospital, just showing us what she was able to do over and over again. It took us a while to really grasp what an AVM was, what this journey was supposed to look like, and what recovery would look like for her as well. I know we've talked about this in the past, but an AVM is basically just a knot of blood vessels that just formed incorrectly when she was forming in the womb. And some people can go their whole lives with nothing happening, and some people it bursts. And Caddie's burst on August 12th. Um, Luckily for us, a ton of people reached out. So I had a pretty good idea of what we were going to be looking at every stage. So she would hit certain things and I would be like, okay, this is what people were talking about. Okay, this is normal. Though it seems very weird, it's normal. And I think that did help a little bit. It also brought in some comparisons that are hard to deal with when you're also dealing with a lot of other things. Um, Other people who have been able to have their AVMs removed or had been able to get back things quicker or hit different milestones quicker, you definitely start to compare your journey to other people's journeys and say, okay, are we moving in the right direction or are we taking steps back that we don't need to take back? But overall, very helpful to see people that had moved through the journey already, taking out what I was feeling because I think it's normal to compare, but definitely scary at the same time. I think part of the hard thing of going through a process like this is just that there's so many unknowns. The brain is such a unique and fragile thing that sometimes what they think is going to work may not work, and what they don't think is going to work actually has really great outcomes. So that's the hard things. There's a lot of trial and error. She went in for one kind of exploratory surgery where they go up through the groin and they were going to look at the AVM and see if it was something that they could get to put coils in or block it off or remove it. And they weren't able to get to it, which made them believe that it was inoperable or just wasn't very safe to operate on, could cause more damage than good. That was a disappointing day, right? Like you're hopeful because she's well enough to go into surgery. She's stable enough to have the surgery done to kind of take a look and then to have them come back so quickly and say, there's really nothing safely that we can do here. That's a disappointment because now you're still stuck with this thing in her head. I think what also is hard is that as quickly as she was making these milestones, there were still steps back that we were taking. And even to this day, every step forward is often followed by a couple steps back. And you just wish that you had that time before this back. You just kind of mourn who she was versus who she is today. And I feel like that's normal as well, but it's just hard to explain that to someone who hasn't gone through this because to the outside world, they see these huge improvements and these things that she has done in relatively a short period of time, but they don't see the days that she's questioning why this happened to her or having a hard teenage moment because friends are able to do things that she's not able to do right now. For instance, this being her birthday week, she's not able to get her driver's license. So she's still on seizure medication, and we cannot get her driver's license while we're still kind of balancing all that stuff out. So it is hard to tell a 16-year-old when that's what they've been looking forward to that we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. Everything has kind of been put on hold. And it's not always so evident until she gets around some of her friends and I'm able to kind of see the differences. And that's hard too. But the great thing is that we have a strong kid who's determined and rightfully so has not let any of this stop her or keep her from doing what she wants to do. In fact, it has completely changed her career goals. Now she wants to go into medicine and help other kids that are going through similar situations of her own. She's been able to go back to the hospital and visit with other kids that are in the hospital and give them encouragement and cheer them up and let them know kind of the secrets that she was able to find out while she was there. And that really is joyful and makes me feel like all of this was happened for a reason. And whether that reason is her making changes in this world, which she already has, but what else can she do with this gives me so much hope and so much joy. Rob and I have changed through this. I don't know how you can't go through something like this and not change. Your perspective definitely shifts. I just sometimes look over at her and I'm just so blessed that I'm able to sit across the couch from her or have her come over and give us a hug or babble on for hours about the most random things. Definitely has taught us to slow down. We don't move as fast as we used to move. If you run into us in the store, we are definitely the slow ones. Feel free to walk around us. I've had to learn patience tenfold. We definitely get stuck on certain topics, certain conversations, and we just talk about them over and over again. It's part of the brain injury, it's part of the recovery. Teaching her techniques to let some of that stuff go and focus on other things or ways to make lists and check things off so that she knows that things have gotten done. So, though her long term memory is very much intact, some of her short term memory is definitely hard. So, she might forget what she had for lunch or what she did yesterday, but she can remember things from her childhood. So it's definitely a struggle when you're dealing with that. As I was getting ready for this week and kind of her birthday, we have a event coming up. I really started to reflect on how grateful I am that we've made it here, how grateful I am that she is doing as well as she's doing and that she's still driven and motivated and has that drive still is amazing. That we haven't had a child who is down on herself or spends a long time wallowing about it has been huge. It's just, it helps to just keep her moving in that right direction. And though this isn't the 16th birthday that I had envisioned in my mind for my child, I just can't help but be so overjoyed that we are here and able to celebrate this. So, again, having to mourn what could have been for what is definitely hard, but doesn't take away the fact that we are blessed beyond measures, that a child that should not have been here is here, and a child that should not have been doing as well as she's doing is here. Her neurosurgeon has said multiple times that he's never seen AVM this bad and somebody survive it. So that she's here is a miracle, and we don't take that for granted. I wanted to say something to Caddie through all of this. I'm going to try to do it without crying. I've made it this far. I'm so proud of you. I'm amazed at you daily, and I can't tell you how much I love you. I didn't think it was possible to love her more, yet I do. What you have accomplished in 16 years, I can't wait to see what you do with your next 16. I want you to remember that you are so tough and so brave, and I'm so proud of you for that. I wanted to do this episode, and I've been wanting to do this episode for a long time, but these wounds are definitely still very raw and very open. And when I'm talking to other parents about coming onto the podcast, it's hard, and I don't discount that for any of them, but I feel like these stories are so important to tell because there's other families that are starting this journey or in the middle of these journeys that need that ray of light to know that there is a path and they can travel it because it's been traveled before. So I would ask, if you are not familiar with AVMs, please do look into it. It is not very common, but there's a small community that is dealing with AVMs and the results of these AVMs, not only in themselves, but also within their families. And I would just say continue to bring awareness to brain injuries and what the recovery process looks like. Because even now, if you were to see Caddie out and about, she looks very healthy, but there's still things that we deal with every single day, from physical things to mental things to memory things. So a lot of the stuff is not on the outside. It's a lot is still being worked on the inside. We're still dealing with things on the outside. Like there's still things that we're trying to get back, but know a lot of it is the unseen. So as I continue this podcast, I do want to bring light to a lot of these stories. I do want parents to feel comfortable knowing that I understand their stories at a very deep personal level. And I want people to understand more of Caddie's story because this child has just blown us away with what she's been able to accomplish. So thank you for allowing me to share this portion. I know I've shared bits and pieces of it up to this point, but I really wanted to take time, especially this week in light of her birthday, to share kind of the initial story of what put us on this path and in hopes that maybe somebody doesn't feel alone in this journey as they're going through it as well. So until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sending this to somebody who might need it. And until next time, stay strong. Bye.